Have you ever sat with the question, why do some women leave such a lasting impression on a man's heart, while others, though beautiful and giving, seem to vanish from memory like a passing breeze? It's not charm, it's not beauty. It's something far older and far deeper, a kind of presence that strikes a hidden chord in the unconscious, something a man doesn't even know he's looking for, until he feels it. According to Carl Jung, all true connection begins not at the surface, but in the soul, in that mysterious collision between inner archetypes that pull two beings together through something more ancient than desire. It is not you he obsesses over. It is the feeling you awaken within him, a kind of soul echo that calls back to something he once knew but cannot name. A woman who lives from her depth, who is gentle and wild, open yet unattainable, soft yet unwavering, becomes a reflection of a longing he didn't know he carried. She's not a person in his mind. She becomes a symbol, an energy, a mystery. And men don't fall in love with people as much as they fall in love with symbols that speak to something hidden within. Jung called this inner presence in a man's psyche the anima, the feminine archetype that exists within him, formed by collective memory, dreams, mythology, and the emotional imprint of ancestral life. The anima isn't modeled after his mother or past lovers. It's not a personality. It's a soulful collage of softness, mystery, wild emotion, sacred silence, a feminine essence that lives beneath his conscious mind. And when a woman unknowingly embodies even fragments of this inner image, he feels a pull that goes beyond logic. She doesn't have to try. Her very existence, her way of being, her ability to flow from depth to silence to wildness, it mirrors something in him he cannot explain. And that's the key. He doesn't understand why he's drawn to her. It's not rational. It's archetypal. It's like she walks straight out of the realm of dreams and symbols into his waking life. He begins to crave her not because of who she is, but because of what she evokes in the quietest chambers of his soul. A woman like this is not necessarily consistent or sweet all the time. She is fluid, she is water. One moment she is mist, subtle and serene. The next, she is a wave, bold and untamed. She is present, but never predictable, tender, but never tame. Her very essence shifts and expands. And that movement awakens something wild in him. Not a desire for conquest, but a desire to understand what can never be fully understood. And that is obsession at the deepest level. She doesn't conform to what the world tells women to be. She doesn't bend her voice, soften her edges, or dim her feelings just to be chosen. She lives with all her contradictions intact, emotional, spiritual, intuitive, raw. She doesn't explain herself. She simply is, and in that authenticity, she becomes what Jung described, the living image of a man's unconscious longing. Not the woman he was taught to want, but the woman his soul has always searched for. This is why some women, despite being kind and devoted, are not remembered, and others who may have never even said "I love you" are impossible to forget. It's not about effort. It's about essence. The woman who awakens the anima does not try to be alluring. She just refuses to betray her own truth. And in doing so, she becomes an emotional archetype, a living mirror that draws a man deeper into his own psyche. Jung warned that when a man projects his anima onto a real woman without awareness, the connection can become unstable. He may idealize her, idolize her, and become dependent on her presence. Not because he truly sees her, but because she has triggered a part of himself he hasn't yet integrated. This is why some romantic experiences feel like chaos and destiny at once. The man isn't falling in love with you. He's falling in love with the mystery inside himself that you awaken. In such moments, love becomes a psychological fire. The woman might wonder, why is he so intense? Why is this so overwhelming? The truth is, She has become the flame dancing in his shadow. The anima is alive, and he cannot separate the symbol from the person. That's why it hurts. That's why it feels like too much. She is not just a woman to him anymore. She is the door to his unconscious, and he's not ready to walk through it. But this also gives rise to something extraordinary. When a woman continues to live fully, when she expresses her emotions without shame, her needs without apology, and her boundaries without fear, she becomes unshakable. She does not get lost in the projections of others. She reflects them back, but she remains centered. This is feminine power not as performance, but as presence. You don't need to understand the anima to awaken it in him. You don't need to study the archetypes or learn seductive techniques. All you need to do is return to yourself. The more deeply you live from your truth, the more your energy will naturally align with the invisible currents that move others. You will stop chasing love, because love will start finding you, not in loud gestures, but in quiet, unconscious yearning. She who evokes the anima is rarely the woman society uplifts. She is the woman who knows herself, who dares to cry in the middle of the day, who walks barefoot through the storms of her inner world, who doesn't need validation to keep breathing fire into her dreams. And when she meets a man not ready to face himself, she lets him go without bitterness, because she was never trying to be chosen. She was always just being free. And yet, if you've ever wondered how to embody this energy, not to manipulate, but to live more fully, you're not alone. In the next part of this journey, I will guide you through the first of 7 feminine energies that awaken this deep-rooted longing in a man's heart. These are not tactics or tricks. They are sacred truths buried in your soul, waiting to be remembered. There is a truth rarely spoken, but often felt in the hidden currents between men and women. A man is not drawn to what is always pleasing. He is drawn to what moves him. Not movement in the body, but movement in the heart. Emotional contrast, the unexpected flow between stillness and fire, lightness and gravity, is one of the most intoxicating energies a woman can carry. And it isn't a game, it is soul rhythm. A woman who lives fully in every part of herself stirs something in a man that even he cannot predict. He may say she's unforgettable, but what he's truly saying is that her presence made him feel something real, something layered, alive, and ungraspable. Carl Jung once wrote that when two psyches meet, there is either transformation or stagnation. But transformation only comes through contrast, through the collision of opposites, the tension between two poles. The woman who dares to embody her full emotional range becomes a catalyst for that very alchemy. She doesn't smile to please. She smiles because joy passes through her like wind through trees. She doesn't cry for sympathy. She cries because sorrow belongs just as much as delight. Her laughter is honest. Her silence is sacred. She does not fear contradiction, because she knows her soul was never meant to be flat. She allows her energy to shift, to deepen, to brighten, to withdraw, not to provoke, but because she is alive. This kind of woman is not easy to understand, and that is the point. A man does not feel drawn to what he already knows. He is drawn to mystery, to complexity, to the sense that something precious may be revealed if he stays close enough, long enough, to witness all her shades. The woman who is always light becomes background noise. But the woman who is both dusk and dawn, she becomes a melody he cannot stop humming. When she teases, he smiles. When she falls quiet, he leans in. When she reveals her softness, he melts. And when she draws her boundary, he straightens with respect. She is not inconsistent. She is emotionally whole. And this wholeness, this refusal to reduce herself to a single version, makes her unforgettable. It is not volatility. It is emotional integrity. She doesn't suppress. She doesn't explode. She expresses. In the psychology of attachment and attraction, The brain responds most powerfully to emotional fluctuation. The highs and lows, the moments of uncertainty, followed by reassurance. These are the movements that awaken dopamine, the neurotransmitter of longing. Jung understood this long before science proved it. He knew that the soul is drawn to tension, to the union of opposites, to paradox as the path to integration. So imagine her, laughing boldly in one moment, then pausing to speak of something sacred. Her eyes hold fire and ocean. Her voice dances between play and depth. She doesn't force emotions, she flows through them. And a man, even one used to control, finds himself undone, not because she demands it, but because her authenticity dissolves his defenses. This is not manipulation. This is soul expression. A woman who embodies emotional contrast doesn't study this as a technique. She becomes it by living from her own heart. She doesn't chase comfort. She allows life to move through her, pain, wonder, confusion, joy, all held with the same reverence. Her presence teaches without words, "You are safe to feel here because I do not fear feeling myself." Psychologists now call this emotional amplitude, the range between light and dark in someone's expression, and they've found that it directly affects memory, bonding, and desire. The mind forgets what is flat, but remembers what is textured. This is why a man might forget 10 women who were always polite, but cannot stop thinking about the one who smiled like a storm and wept like the sky. Jung saw all human beings as a marriage of opposites, masculine and feminine, shadow and light, control and surrender. When a woman allows herself to reflect all of this in her presence, she becomes an initiation. She awakens not just attraction, but transformation. A man may come close to her, hoping for romance, but he stays because he begins to feel more himself in her presence. But let this be said. Emotional contrast is not emotional instability. It is not chaos or recklessness. It is ordered aliveness, the sacred willingness to let the heart shift like the moon. It's knowing you can be tender without being weak, fierce without being cruel, mysterious without being absent. This level of feminine energy requires inner permission, the bravery to stop performing and start being. In a world where predictability is the norm, where people wear masks to survive, a woman who lets her soul be visible, in all its beauty and mess, becomes a kind of revolution. She doesn't just inspire men. She awakens something long buried within them, their own capacity to feel. And once they taste it, they can't go back to numbness. They will crave her without knowing why. That is the true power of emotional contrast. It's not about keeping someone on edge or playing hot and cold. It's about becoming a mirror for what is most human. The soul in motion, the emotion that rises and recedes. The truth that cannot be rehearsed. She doesn't become this for him. She becomes it for herself. And in doing so, she becomes unforgettable. In the next part, we'll explore a deeper mystery. What happens when a woman not only feels fully, but also knows how to center herself in that emotional ocean? For movement alone is not enough. What sustains a man's devotion is the energy of emotional self-mastery. The rarest kind of power, the kind that holds without clinging and loves without losing its center. If emotional contrast draws a man in like a storm he cannot resist, it is emotional self-mastery that keeps him rooted, not as a captive, but as a man in awe, a woman who feels everything but is not ruled by those feelings. Radiates something rare, sovereignty. Jung called this the path of individuation, the journey to becoming one's full and unshakable self. And in the world of love and desire, no energy commands deeper reverence than a woman who is already whole before anyone arrives. She doesn't suppress her emotions, but she doesn't surrender her center to them either. When love knocks on her door, she smiles. When silence follows, she breathes. She still goes to the gym. She still makes tea. She still writes in her journal. Her life continues. And this continuity, The steady rhythm of self-honoring is what makes her unforgettable. She becomes the constant in her own life. And that, to a man, there is a kind of woman who, without even saying it, makes it clear. I don't need you to make me feel worthy. I already am. That energy doesn't come from arrogance or detachment. It comes from deep integration. She has walked through the shadows of loneliness, stood at the edge of longing, and emerged, not bitter, but grounded. She has become her own safe place. And when a man senses that, he knows he cannot play in her presence. He must arrive with depth, or not at all. In a culture addicted to fast connection, the woman who walks slowly through love, who doesn't rush to be claimed, who doesn't fall apart from an unanswered message, who doesn't hand over her self-worth for fleeting affection, becomes a living mystery. Men may flirt with many, but they invest in the one who holds her soul steady through joy and sorrow alike. Jung wrote that we must become aware of our inner world, or risk being ruled by it. A woman who has done this work, who knows what triggers her, what heals her, what inspires her, doesn't fall into emotional dependence. She may love fiercely, but she doesn't crumble when left unseen. Her world is rich, her inner dialogue is wise, her self-respect is not up for negotiation. And this self-mastery is not cold. It is sacred. It allows her to love with an open heart, to express without fear, to be vulnerable without becoming fragile. She can say, I miss you, and still sleep well alone. She can cry without shame, and still hold herself with dignity. Her emotions are not traps. They are songs, deeply felt, beautifully expressed, and then released. Men often do not realize how much they crave this until they experience it. They are used to being needed, chased, depended on. But when they meet a woman who doesn't lean into them for completion, only for connection, it changes everything. They don't feel burdened. They feel challenged, inspired, awakened. Because now they must meet her from a place of depth, not dominance. This kind of woman doesn't cancel plans the moment he texts. She doesn't rearrange her entire world to prove she cares. She shows love not by giving up her life, but by inviting him into it. She doesn't disappear into the relationship. She remains fully herself. And ironically, that is what makes him want to stay, because her life has a gravitational pull that does not beg, but beckons. Jung believed that love between two individuated souls becomes a container for spiritual growth. It's not about merging and losing the self. It's about remaining whole while choosing each other. A woman who understands this doesn't enter love with desperation. She enters with discernment, and that discernment becomes her quiet boundary, the line that says, I can love you, but I will never abandon myself to do it. A man will test this, often unconsciously. He will pull away to see what she does. He will offer crumbs to see if she accepts them. But when she doesn't chase, when she doesn't panic, when she calmly says, that doesn't feel right to me, he realizes he cannot manipulate her emotions. She is emotionally sovereign. And that realization shifts everything. Respect is born, and with respect, love deepens. Behavioral psychology affirms this truth. We value most what we invest in. If a woman gives too much, too soon, without requiring presence, effort, or integrity, she becomes emotionally devalued, not because she lacks worth, but because she didn't ask anyone to see it. But the woman who lives with self-mastery says, without words, I know my value. I welcome those who see it. I release those who don't. This doesn't make her invincible. She feels heartbreak. She mourns loss. But she never abandons her rituals. She still eats nourishing food, still lights her candle before bed, still speaks kindly to herself when no one else is listening. And this quiet consistency becomes her strength, the part of her that no storm can dismantle. In a world of instant gratification and emotional instability, The woman who walks through love with grace, steadiness, and unwavering self-trust is a rare jewel. Men don't just desire her. They aspire to meet her where she is. And not all of them can, because she doesn't need to be chosen. She has already chosen herself. In the next part, we will explore the mystical layer of mystery itself. How space, silence, and sacred restraint can awaken more longing than any words ever could. Because the woman who reveals everything too quickly may be liked, but the one who guards her depth becomes unforgettable. Mystery is not silence. It is presence without explanation. In a world where everything is advertised, posted, and defined, a woman who holds part of herself back, not out of fear but reverence, becomes irresistible. Carl Jung once said, "Man needs difficulties. They are necessary for health." The psyche, in both men and women, is not drawn to ease, but to what stirs imagination, curiosity, and soul-searching. Mystery is the language of the unconscious, and the woman who speaks it, not with words but with energy, becomes unforgettable. She does not withhold to manipulate. She withholds because she knows not every hand deserves to touch her inner world. Her stories are not hidden. They are sacred. Her emotions are not repressed. They are revealed slowly, like petals opening only when the sun is right. She doesn't feel the need to explain everything she's been through. She waits for the moment when trust makes space for truth. And in that waiting, a man feels both intrigue and respect. Most women are taught that openness is virtue, that to be desired, you must be transparent, expressive, endlessly available. But the feminine that holds back just enough, not to tease, but to protect, invokes something deeper. She becomes not a puzzle to solve, but a journey to enter, not a book to skim, but a poem to read over and over again, never quite the same each time. Jung spoke of projection, the way we see in others what we have not yet claimed in ourselves. When a man meets a woman whose soul is not fully revealed, he projects beauty, magic, even divinity onto her. Not because she pretends to be those things, but because she has left space. And it is that space where his unconscious comes to life. The unknown becomes the sacred. He does not say, "She fascinates me," because she's beautiful. He says, "I can't stop thinking about her, and I don't know why." That's the soul speaking. The mind can't explain it, because it wasn't meant to. You did not enter his life to be understood. You entered it to awaken something, and awakening cannot be rushed. Think of the last time someone asked you about your past, and you felt the urge to explain everything, to pour out your whole story in a single sitting. Now imagine instead pausing, smiling gently, and saying, "That part of me is something I share slowly." That single line holds more power than 10 confessions. It tells him you have depth, that there are layers, that knowing you is not a right, but a privilege. This is not aloofness. It is spiritual elegance. You do not reveal yourself to be approved of. You reveal yourself when the moment asks for truth, not for performance. The difference between a woman who is liked and a woman who is longed for is this. The first shows everything too soon, hoping to be chosen. The second waits until she knows she can be safe while remaining whole. Psychologists speak of the zygonic effect, the human tendency to remember incomplete or interrupted experiences more vividly than completed ones. When a man feels he hasn't fully reached you, when he senses there's more to discover, his curiosity binds him to you. And curiosity, more than certainty, is what keeps desire alive. But here's the paradox. You cannot fake mystery. If you pretend to be unavailable or vague as a tactic, he will sense the performance. True mystery arises from emotional rootedness, from the quiet confidence that says, "I don't need to be known by everyone to be at peace with who I am." That energy is rare. It is felt immediately, and it commands reverence without ever asking for it. Mystery is not absence. It is magnetic restraint. It's the refusal to fill every silence, the wisdom to let the air between two people carry weight, the way your eyes drift to the side when asked a personal question, the pause before you answer. The choice to say, "Not yet," when someone wants access to your pain. These are not tactics. They are echoes of self-respect. Some men may not stay in the presence of mystery. They may crave certainty, quick intimacy, emotional convenience. Let them go. Their departure is a gift. The man who cannot sit in mystery is not prepared to witness your truth, but the man who remains, who listens to the silence between your words, who keeps showing up without needing to solve you, that man is being transformed. You are not a riddle. You are a sacred terrain. And those who walk through you must do so barefoot, slow, and in silence. Jung taught that the soul reveals itself only in fragments, through symbols, dreams, and quiet knowing. When you live as mystery, not to hide, but to honor the depth of who you are, you become not just a woman in his life, but a mirror of his unconscious longing. So let your depth remain layered. Let your stories emerge in their own time. Do not fill every moment with noise. Let your pauses echo. Let your presence linger like perfume in a hallway long after you've walked past. And trust that the right soul will not try to decode you. He will stand in awe of what he can never fully name. In the next part, we'll explore the heart of lasting magnetism, the sacred joy a woman carries when she knows how to live for herself. Because even mystery is meaningless without light behind it. And the woman who finds delight in her own being becomes the flame no man dares to blow out. There is a kind of joy that does not need to be shared to be real. A laughter that rises, not because someone told a joke, but because life itself feels delicious. A dance that unfolds in the kitchen with no music playing, no audience watching, and no performance needed. This is the joy of a woman who knows how to be with herself. Not to fill a void, but to celebrate her own existence. And it is this kind of joy, this effortless enchantment, that leaves the deepest impression in a man's memory. Carl Jung believed that the unlived life creates shadows, fragments of potential left dormant in the psyche. But the woman who lives fully, who tastes her days with wonder and curiosity, who delights in the small, without waiting for permission, she radiates something that no man can ignore. He might be drawn to her beauty, but it is her aliveness that obsesses him. He doesn't just want to hold her. He wants to understand what makes her glow. She doesn't smile to attract. She smiles because the moment is sweet, because the wind feels soft against her skin, or the memory of a childhood joke just passed through her mind. She is amused by life, and that amusement is contagious. She doesn't text him to get his attention. She texts because she genuinely wants to share the beauty of a sunrise, or a thought she had in the market, or the joy of finding her favorite snack unexpectedly on a shelf. This kind of joy is not loud. It is not manic or exaggerated. It is quiet, warm, and steady. It comes from a woman who is not waiting for love to begin her life. She has already begun. Her days are full, not with tasks, but with meaning. She reads books that make her feel things. She wears lipstick on rainy days, for no reason at all. She plants flowers on her balcony, just to see what will bloom. She lives with herself, the way most people wait to live with someone else. Men are deeply drawn to this, often without knowing why. They may say she's different, or that she feels like a breath of fresh air, but what they're really sensing is that she doesn't need them to exist. She wants love, perhaps, but she doesn't require it to feel valid, worthy, or awake. Her soul was already lit before anyone arrived. And that is the kind of light a man never forgets. In a world addicted to reaction, to likes, to messages, to being seen, the woman who doesn't need to be watched becomes magnetic. She is not performing joy, she is living it. And in doing so, she becomes a mirror to the parts of others that have long been asleep. Her presence whispers, you too, can come alive. And that whisper can haunt a man far more than any seduction ever could. Self-amusement is not the same as independence. It is deeper. It is the feminine gift of playfulness without audience. The sacred ability to laugh at her own mistakes, to speak to her cat like an old friend, to sing off-key while cleaning the house. Not because it looks good, but because it feels good. She doesn't need to be caught in the act. She doesn't need her joy to be witnessed to make it real. And yet, when it is witnessed, it leaves a mark. A man may remember the way her eyes lit up at a street musician, or how she twirled once in a grocery store aisle for no reason. He may not say it aloud, but he'll think, she doesn't belong to this world. She belongs to something brighter, and in that moment, his desire becomes reverence. Jung taught that individuation, the process of becoming whole, is not found in the grand gestures, but in the daily acts of soul alignment. A woman who laughs when no one is watching is more whole than a woman who performs happiness for others, because that joy is hers, not borrowed, not staged, but born from within. And that kind of joy cannot be taken away, not by rejection, not by absence, not even by heartbreak. This is why self-amusement protects you. When a man withdraws, you do not fall apart. You may ache, yes, but the flowers still bloom on your balcony. The book still waits by your bed. The cafe down the street still makes your favorite drink. Your life doesn't pause. It continues. And in continuing, you remind yourself and anyone watching that you were never waiting to be chosen. Men often come back to women like this, not because of guilt or pressure, but because something in her energy stays with them. They remember the way she laughed at the world, the way she walked with light in her step even when no one followed, the way her voice held joy like it was her oldest friend. And they realize she was not trying to be memorable. She just... A woman like this is not easily replaced, because she's not a reflection of what others want. She's the flame of what she wants, and the warmth of that flame lingers long after she's gone. You can't chase it. You can only be near it when invited, and once you've felt it, no other light feels quite the same. In the next part, we will explore one of the most spiritually powerful feminine gifts: presence. Not just physical attention, but the sacred ability to make someone feel seen, heard, and safe in your emotional field. Because when joy meets presence, a man doesn't just desire you, he finds home in you. Presence is more than being there. It is the sacred art of being with the moment, with the silence, with another person's invisible world. And when a woman knows how to offer her presence fully, not half listening, not waiting to speak, not calculating a response, but truly attuning to what is, she awakens something in a man that even he may not have known he needed. Carl Jung believed that deep healing happens not through advice, but through resonance. And presence is pure resonance. A woman who can hold a man's words, his pauses, his contradictions, without fixing, correcting, or rushing to relate, becomes a rare kind of sanctuary. In her presence, his nervous system softens, his mind quiets, he doesn't feel the need to perform, to impress, or to defend. He is allowed, perhaps for the first time, to just be. And that experience, more than beauty, more than wit, makes him want to stay. This presence is not loud. It is not performative. It is a still, grounded energy that says, I see you. You don't need to explain. A woman like this doesn't fill silence with advice. She doesn't try to match his story with one of her own. She doesn't interrupt a hard truth with quick comfort. She allows the space to hold it. Her stillness becomes the bowl in which his truth is received, gently, without judgment. We live in a time where attention is fractured, where conversations are multitasked, and souls are barely touched. So when a man meets a woman who listens with her entire body, who watches with quiet eyes, who nods slowly not to respond but to feel. He will not forget it, because she didn't just hear him. She met him in that sacred, unseen space where the soul finally feels allowed. Jung taught that one of the most powerful spiritual practices is to witness another's reality without absorbing it or needing to change it. When a woman holds this energy, she becomes more than a partner. She becomes a vessel, not to carry someone's pain, but to reflect it back with dignity. She is not overwhelmed by his wounds, nor is she intoxicated by his strength. She simply stays. Presence is not about knowing what to say. It's about letting go of the need to say anything at all. It is the willingness to be silent, to sit with discomfort, to allow the moment to unfold without grabbing it. And paradoxically, that space, that restraint, creates more intimacy than hours of conversation ever could. A man may not remember the exact words she said, but he will remember how he felt sitting beside her. Safe, unrushed, seen. This kind of woman doesn't need to impress. She doesn't need to constantly entertain or fill the air with charm. She may speak softly or not at all, but when she speaks, it lands. Because she's been listening. She's been there the whole time, not waiting for her turn, but honoring the moment itself. And that level of presence can't be faked. It is earned through deep inner stillness. You can feel it in her breath. It is slow, unforced. You can feel it in her gaze. Steady, warm, not searching for something to gain, but simply meeting you where you are. Her posture isn't stiff, nor is it collapsed. It holds a kind of open strength, the kind that says, I have made peace with myself, and so I can hold space for you. That is presence. That is power. In healing work, therapists often say that the most transformative moments happen not during analysis, but when the client feels truly seen without interruption. The same is true in love. A man might have dated dozens of women, but when he meets the one who makes him feel he doesn't have to pretend, that he doesn't have to be the funny one, the strong one, the charming one, he begins to return to himself in her presence. He may not tell her. He may not even understand it, but something in him opens. He shares more. He breathes deeper. He looks at her a little longer when she's not looking, because she gives him space to be human. Not perfect, not polished, just real. And that permission becomes an emotional bond he cannot find in shallow waters. Presence is not a skill you practice in conversation. It's a state of being cultivated in your relationship with yourself. When you've sat in your own silence, when you've made peace with your own pain, you stop rushing to fix others. You stop needing noise. You no longer confuse attention with intimacy. You learn to listen, to feel, to witness. And that energy is unmistakable. A woman like this does not have to ask a man to stay. Her presence becomes the place he returns to without knowing why. In her, he finds not just beauty, but peace. Not just passion, but trust. And trust is what keeps him coming back when the fire cools, when the world turns, when time passes. Because in her, he remembers a truth that most have forgotten. Being seen is more sacred than being desired. In the next part, we will unfold one of the most overlooked secrets of feminine magnetism: strategic scarcity. Not as a game, but as an energy of self-worth that refuses to be too available too soon. Because what is too accessible is often overlooked, and what is rare is revered. Not everything precious is meant to be touched. Some things, like moonlight on water, like the hush of a cathedral, are meant to be witnessed from a distance, felt deeply, but not grasped. So too is the woman who understands the quiet art of sacred scarcity. Carl Jung wrote that the human mind is drawn not to what is easy, but to what evokes meaning. And in love, what is too easily attained is rarely deeply valued. This is not about playing games. It's about recognizing that your energy, your presence, your time are currencies of soul, and not everyone deserves unlimited access to them. The woman who is always available, always ready, always eager, not out of love, but out of fear, loses her magnetism. She becomes expected, and what becomes expected often becomes invisible. But the woman who lives her life, fully, richly, independently, even as she welcomes love, speaks a different message entirely. Her absence is not punishment. It is rhythm. Her pauses are not rejection. They are poetry. She is not avoiding him. She is simply honoring herself, and in doing so, she becomes unforgettable, because she reminds him, this is not a gift you get to open whenever you please. This is a soul you must earn the right to hold. Jung believed the psyche is pulled between opposites, light and shadow, closeness and distance, presence and absence. And it is in that very tension that desire is born. If you are always near, always responsive, always predictable, there is no space for his longing to grow. Longing needs air. It needs quiet. It needs you to disappear sometimes. Not to punish him, but to let his soul reach for you. Imagine this. He texts, "Want to meet this morning?" You smile, grateful for the invitation, but you reply with softness and truth, "I've made plans this morning, perhaps later today." You don't cancel your world for him. You don't rush. You don't orbit around his availability. And in that moment, a flicker happens in his psyche, a realization. She belongs to herself, and that realization births a deeper desire, one not rooted in ego, but in awe. Not because you're cold, but because your warmth is not given to just anyone, at any time. That kind of energy is not only rare, it is holy. It requires a man to step forward with intention, not impulse, and those who cannot simply fall away. Scarcity, in this sacred sense, is not silence. It is spacing. It's knowing when to step back, so that he may step forward. It's letting the conversation end without rushing to fill it. It's not texting every hour. It's letting the echoes of your last words linger, not because you're waiting, but because your life is too full to demand constant attention. And in that fullness, he begins to wonder, and that wondering becomes devotion. Behavioral psychology confirms what mystics have always known. What we work for, we value. What we must reach toward, we treasure. And when something is too easily attained, the mind discounts its worth. You may be loving, you may be generous, but if you do not ask for presence, respect, and intention in return, you become overextended, not because you are weak, but because you did not guard your sacred space. Jung warned that what remains unconscious rules us as fate. Many women give too much too fast, not because they want to, but because they fear loss. The unconscious tells them, if I don't respond quickly, he might leave. If I don't always say yes, he might find someone else. But the truth is this: what leaves because you honored your boundaries was never meant to stay. And what stays when you stand firm, that is where love can begin. So take space when you need it. Let the silence breathe. Miss him, but don't lose yourself. Say not now without apology. Let your energy be rare, not as manipulation, but as a mirror of your value. Because a woman who is always chasing will never be caught, and a woman who sits in her own light will always be sought. This is the feminine paradox. The less you demand, the more you're remembered. The quieter you become, the louder your energy echoes. The more you value your time, the more others will too. You are not difficult. You are discerned. And only those with eyes to see will stay to listen to the quiet hum of your worth. In the next part, our final chapter, we'll explore the seventh and most transformative secret of all: how to allow a man to rise into his masculine role by stepping back, by receiving, by letting him reveal his soul through action. Because when you give him space to show up, he just might surprise you. There is a beauty in stillness that no pursuit can replicate. And there is a power in allowing that cannot be found in constant effort. The final secret of feminine magnetism is not about doing more, but about doing less. From deeper place. Carl Jung said that what you resist not only persists, but grows. And many women, in their desire to be loved, resist the one thing that would make them unforgettable: receiving, not passively, but consciously, divinely, with the grace of one who knows her worth. To receive is not weakness. It is trust. It is the courageous decision to let him show you who he is, rather than constantly proving who you are. It is giving him the sacred space to rise into his own energy, to lead, to reach, to offer, without being instructed, pushed, or tested. And this is where the polarity between feminine and masculine becomes magnetic. You draw him in, not by motion, but by the quiet invitation of space. Men do not bond through words alone. They bond through effort, through what they give, build, carry, or protect. When you allow him to give, whether that's his time, his presence, his problem-solving nature, or his affection, you aren't burdening him. You're awakening his deeper nature. You're saying, "I trust you enough to let you try," and that trust becomes the ground for his devotion. When a woman does everything, initiates every conversation, plans every detail, over-explains her feelings, always reaches first, she may feel proactive, but unknowingly, she blocks his opportunity to invest. And psychologically, we value what we invest in. If he hasn't earned his place in your life, he won't feel anchored in it. But if you allow him to contribute, even in small ways, he begins to feel purposeful in your presence. And purpose births attachment. You don't need to test him with games. You don't need to punish him with silence. You simply need to hold your energy. You need to trust that if he truly values you, he will move toward you. And if he doesn't, that absence is its own kind of answer. The feminine does not chase. She responds. She creates the container and allows what is true to reveal itself through action. This can feel frightening, especially if you've been abandoned before, or learned to survive through control. But healing happens when you choose not to repeat the cycle. When you pause instead of pursue. When you observe instead of overgive. When you allow his energy to come to you, and wait, not with anxiety, but with grounded self-trust. Jung believed that relationship is the crucible, where the soul is refined, but only when both partners are conscious. When you step back and give him space to come forward, you're not losing power. You're stepping into sacred alignment. You're making room for the real him to emerge, not the one coaxed by pressure, but the one called forth by your presence. This doesn't mean being passive. It means being open. When he offers help, you receive it without guilt. When he listens, you allow it to matter. When he shows up emotionally, you don't interrupt or rush him. You lean back, not in distance, but in trust. You let him feel your receptivity, your warmth, your subtle invitation. That is feminine magnetism, in its highest form, the power to pull, not. And when he rises, when he brings you tea without being asked, remembers your favorite flower, shows up when you're tired, or simply places his hand on yours in stillness, you let yourself receive that moment fully. You do not shrink it. You do not dismiss it. You say, with your energy, "I feel that, I welcome that, I see who you're becoming when you're with me." And that reflection can change a man's life. Because ultimately, men don't fall in love with what's easy. They fall in love with who they become around a woman. And if that woman gives them the space to be noble, to be present, to be protectors of something sacred, they will not only cherish her, they will protect that connection with their soul. They will become the kind of man she can lean into without losing herself. You don't have to convince a man to love you. You only have to love yourself enough to let him decide. Let him move toward you. Let him step into the quiet fire of your being. Let him earn the unfolding of your world. and trust that those who don't will fall away, making space for those who can hold you in full presence, with full intention. Carl Jung said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." The woman who has looked within, who has tasted her own soul, no longer begs to be seen. She becomes the vision others cannot forget. You are that woman. You are not a performance. You are not a tactic. You are a universe. And the man meant to walk with you will feel it in your silence, in your joy, in your grace, in your power, not because you chased him, but because you remembered who you were before anyone arrived.